Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's podcast is sponsored by Clay, a beautiful and private digital Rolodex intentionally designed to help you be more thoughtful with the people who matter to you. I'm always looking for ways to strengthen the human connections I have because people are everything to me in both my personal life and in my career. Yet remembering details about conversations I had at happy hour or over a Zoom call can be hard, and figuring out how I know someone I met years ago can seriously use up so much brain power. Before Clay, being thoughtful required relying on my memory, as well as a mix of spreadsheets, note cards, address books, and so many other tools, in addition to it being so difficult to manage. But that's where Clay comes in. A stunning, intuitive, and private home for your relationships built automatically from the handful of platforms you use every day, like your email, calendar, phone, contacts, LinkedIn, Twitter, and more. When you log on to Clay, you get to see information about all of the people you've interacted with over the years in just one place. You could easily find a person's bio, work history, social media, and start jotting down notes, reminders, and more to deepen your relationships with them over time. Be a better friend. Be a better colleague. The most powerful way to never forget who matters to you is to try Clay today. Just visit clay.earth, that's clay.earth, or click the link below. This podcast episode is sponsored by Founders Book. You know when you have an idea? Well, it's not always so easy to turn it into a business. But with Founders Book, they support you with all the tools, guides, templates, and an operating system, along with savings from SaaS platforms to build, launch, and scale your idea into a business. A few weeks ago, I signed up for Founders Book to learn how to build and launch a new business. And since then, I have stuck with Founders Book for three main reasons. First, you get access to the best tools and resources to turn any idea into an MVP and beyond. Plus, they are a startup OS, a one Notion-based workspace for building and growing your startup. You can find everything in one place. And you can save up to $500 in credits and benefits from over 200 SaaS platforms that you're going to use anyway for your business. Try Founders Book today by clicking the link below in our show notes. I promise you, if you're somebody with an idea, but you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, Founders Book has all of the answers that you need. Check it out today. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. I just got back from a couple of weeks in Florida, and it was such a wonderful change of pace. Anytime you leave New York City, I feel like you just start to see the world differently, because when you live here, you think the whole world is New York City. You think everybody just keeps pushing each other and shoving each other and walking really fast and speaking really fast and having that New York energy and attitude. And then you go other places and you realize that not everybody is living their lives with such intensity. And because of that, it almost calms you down a little bit. When I got back to New York, some of my friends were like, "What did you do in Florida?" And my answer was nothing. And I think they thought I was being like typical Jen, just like holding back information. But the truth is I really did nothing. And by nothing, I mean, of course I did work and, what I had to do. But then I did a lot of nothing, a lot of lounging on the couch. I read more books in the past 2 weeks than I've read all year. I watched a lot of TV because I don't do that very often in New York. And I just didn't do much. I didn't even leave the house very much, but it was so relaxing and it was just the perfect getaway, the perfect trip. But of course, coming back to New York, it's all about getting back into that pace, and it feels really crummy at first because when you land back in New York, everybody's at that pace of like 100 and you're coming in at like a 15, and you see everybody else at 100 and you're like, oh my God, like I have to get back to that pace. I have to get back in the zone. And it's exhausting. It's almost like immediately exhausting because you're trying to get back to a level that you've been gone from for so long. So today was my catch-up day. I had like 10 phone calls all day, taking all the phone calls that I didn't take when I was in Florida. And then right after the 10 phone calls, I went out to dinner for my friend's birthday. And while I'm at dinner, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a podcast for tomorrow. I didn't record it. I have it all written out. I know what I want to do for the podcast, but I didn't actually record it. And I'm just sitting at dinner like, oh my God, I hope no one can tell from my facial expressions that I am freaking out right now. And I'm so stressed. So the dinner ended and I am back here to give you a podcast, the podcast that you deserve, my friends. And today I want to talk about the question of what do you want? And that's such a powerful question because rarely do other people ask you that question, but even more rare do you ask yourself that question. You know, the people who ask you what you want, like when you're like paying for a service, you're getting your nails done, you're going out to dinner, they'll say to you, hey, what do you want? But like in your everyday life, rarely does your boss sit you down and go, hey, like, what do you want from this position? And rarely do you sit yourself down at a coffee shop and say, hey, Jen, like, what do you want from the next month of your life? Like, we don't actually ask ourselves what we want in really important situations. So I ask you to think about that. Like, when is the last time you asked yourself, what do I want? And then, you know, once you've admitted it out loud, can you push yourself even further? Is that actually what you want? Or is that just the answer you give because you are avoiding this question? I'll be honest with you, I am no good at answering this question, but I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better at admitting what I want and not stumbling on my words when somebody asks me that question. Recently, when I get together with friends, I ask them that question. I turn the tables on them. And they eyeball me like I'm some kind of alien that just landed on Earth and asked them for $1 million. They'll be like, Jen, what do you mean? What do I want? And I just repeat the question, like, what do you want? What do you want out of your life? What do you want out of this situation? What do you want out of our friendship? What do you want out of your career? What do you want? And it's a tough question because, again, we spend like so much of our time just trying to figure out how to get through the day, how to get through our to-do list. Like all I did today was think about how to get to the next phone call, to just get the day over with. We hardly ever have a time or a vision for our future or really any answers to what we actually want out of this life. Like every single moment you're living your life, it's your life. But then we don't even know what we're doing with our life half of the time. And so when we live it, when we really live it in a way that's not super fulfilling, or, you know, we just end up living it in a way where we don't even get close to the expectations that we have because we don't even know what those expectations are. I heard this confidence coach, Regina Bonds, who's on the Today Show, which is another thing I watched a lot of when I was in Florida. And she's on the Today Show and she says, she's a confident coach, and she says this quote that I absolutely love. She says, what you can't explain can't be obtained. What you can't explain can't be obtained. So if you can't clearly explain who you are and what you want and those types of questions, how is your life going to change? How are you going to get anything different than what you have today? And if you're the kind of person who's not happy with what you have today, or you feel stuck, or you feel lost, you better get good at answering the question of what you can't explain can't be obtained. Look, I'm guilty of this. I'm the kind of person who is like so bad at explaining what I want and all of these things, but here's 3 ways I'm trying to get better at it. Number 1, when people ask me simple questions like, Jen, what do you want for dinner? Or where do you want to meet on Saturday? Rather than answering, or I don't care, or you pick, I'm going to start coming up with an idea and share that idea. And I'm going to share whatever I think of first. If I'm with a friend and they go, you know, I'm hungry, what do you want to eat? Rather than me saying, you pick, I'll go anywhere, I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my mind. Because doing this helps with confidence, but it also helps you admit and practice to admit what you actually want. Next, I'm writing a list of what I want for August and September. You know, it's really hard sometimes to think like full picture. What do you want out of your life? What do you want out of your year? But it's like, take a step back, Jen. What do you actually want this month? And what do you want next month? And then I'm going to share that list with Adam, a friend, or maybe even a stranger. So get ready, strangers of New York. Because when you're able to express out loud what you want, it makes it feel obtainable and it makes it feel real. And then 3, when I'm in a situation that doesn't feel right, I'm going to ask myself this question of, why don't I want this? Why don't I want to be here? Why don't I want to know this person? Why don't I want to be in this situation? Why don't I want to have this kind of job? Because when you figure out why you don't want to do something, knowing what you don't want can help you get closer to what you do. So if you're a person like Jen, this question stresses me out because I don't know what I want. Why don't you start off by asking yourself what you don't want? Because that could actually lead you closer to figuring out who you are. All of this to say is, my friend, it's a day. It's another day in your life. So what is it that you want? Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.